Hello, everyone. This is Rachel Yellen with the Yes to Birth Experience. Today we have vitality lifestyle expert and singer songwriter Karen Atkins. Welcome, Karen. So good to be with you.
Welcome. Thank you. Hi, Rachel.
I love that. You're like welcoming everybody. That's perfect. That's totally perfect. I'm so glad that you're here. Not only because we share a love for Mill Valley, California, and not only do we have a sweet love connection, just me and you, and we're deep friends, but also just because what you do for people is phenomenal. I just want to share with all of our viewers that when I met Karen, I just thought, like, she has such good energy. She has so much energy, and she has this exudes health and wellness. And I was like, I wanted to know more about what she does. And then it turns out she works in all of these amazing ways. She helps people optimize their energy through using essential oils, qigong, a therapeutic technique called body talk, through music, through nutrition, and several other therapeutic processes. So we are super lucky that she's here with us today. Karen's music has won awards. Her music has been in films, and she actually did a field study that proves that music reduces stress and pain levels. So we'll talk about a little bit about that in our session today. So Karen, I want to just jump right in, and I want to start by asking you, in your experience of working in all the different fields that you work in, and then particularly in the field of pregnancy and birth, what's missing from the conversations, the discussions that people are having around pregnancy and birth?
That's a great question. I think what people don't really talk about very much is managing energy during pregnancy, which is really the foundation for a healthy pregnancy. If you want to talk about a healthy pregnancy, you need energy, right? And, the interesting thing is that I assumed that a lot of people would be talking about this because it's such an important topic. And then I kind of did a little research, Googling sort of, what are people talking about? How are they talking about managing energy? And I realized, no, most people are actually not talking about that in general, but especially during pregnancy. And it's such an important topic that I realized, wow, I definitely need to get out there and share more of what I know with people, especially as it relates to pregnancy. And, the thing is, most of the time you hear people talking about how not to be tired. I mean, if anybody does discuss energy, they say, well, I'm so tired. How can I not be tired? And they say, just take afternoon naps and you'll be fine. But managing energy is a lot more than just not being tired. And, it's vital for life. Anything that we want to accomplish in life, there's really nothing that we can do in life that doesn't require a basic life force energy. So that's what I want to emphasize here. Maybe it would be helpful for me to share a little story of someone that I've worked with to give you a little bit more context about how important energy management is, and especially during pregnancy. This woman named Missy came to me when she was pregnant. I think it was her fourth or fifth child. I lost count. She now has 7. But she was kind of a mess, and she was exhausted. She was scattered. She was really stressed. And the thing is that she was doing all the things that one is told to do when they're pregnant. She was taking her mommy yoga classes. She was eating really healthy. She was taking her prenatals. She was using essential oils. She was taking her afternoon naps. She was doing all these things, but she still felt drained. And so she came to me, and I was able to help her kind of get a handle about what was going on and give her some practical tools. And the biggest thing was that I helped her find ways to cultivate her energy. And the result was actually that the rest of her pregnancy was not only more enjoyable than her previous pregnancies, but she had so much more energy that she was able to do things that she hadn't been able to do before, like give more to her family, her other children, her husband. And she was also able to reconnect with her own sense of purpose and her sense of self, which was really exciting for her. But I think the best part was that the birth was so easeful that she ended up having the baby at home. And the baby came out so quickly that her husband was lucky enough to be there to catch the baby because they didn't even have time for the midwife to come. And they laughed about it. It was this really amazing experience. So
So cool. It's so cool. Of course, I love hearing about these sort of accidental home birth type situations. But there is so much ease, right? There, because people don't hear that enough, that there can be so much ease in the pregnancy and in the birth itself. I'm really curious, how did you go about learning about energy cultivation? And like how does one even do that?
well, I ended up discovering about energy cultivation because I had a personal experience of having energy drains and turning it around. So one of the things that happened was from 2006 to 2010, I had a very large healing center in New York City. And I put all my energy basically into the center. And I was not only doing that, but I was flying around the world teaching, body talk, as you mentioned, and other healing tools. And I gave so much of my energy that I was not only exhausted, but I started feeling unmotivated. I was losing my creative energy and my passion, which, you probably know I'm a pretty passionate person. So that was not a good thing. I was not happy about that. So at that time, a Qigong master came to teach a weekend workshop at my center, and I went. And I was so tired at the time that I struggled to focus and even keep my eyes open for some of the time. But something was still penetrating. And by the end of the workshop, I started feeling this growing sense of excitement. It's kind of hard to put it into words, but it's like this bubbly feeling inside that carried with it this sense of, I don't know, possibilities, even adventure. I walked away from that weekend with what I felt was the key to not just generating and cultivating, but sustaining, maintaining my life force. And what I love is now I get to share and apply what I learned with others, especially women, and especially women who are pregnant or trying to get pregnant. I'm particularly interested in working with those women because it's such a stressful time. And there's so much that can be done to make that experience better. So, I mean, I even got so excited that I actually created a comprehensive course where I interviewed a number of experts on how to have a vibrant pregnancy. And we cover a lot of the things that I've learned over the years, including this energy piece. And then something interesting happened. So this is another interesting story. So I hired someone named Sherry to help me organize this program. And she was in her late 20s and she really wanted to get pregnant. And her job for me was to go through and listen to all of the interviews from my program. And at the time, she was going through a lot of emotional challenges. And in the process of diving into all of this juicy content that I had put together, she started to be able to resolve and heal a lot of what was coming up for her. And then she got pregnant. And this whole process, while she was working on it, took a little while. It's a longer story on that piece. But anyway, so then, of course, she applied a lot of what she had learned in this course and was able to have a super energetic and graceful pregnancy and also a very easeful birth. And she ended up having what I call a Buddha baby. She actually even named him Bodhi. And I was really thrilled because this is exactly why I wake up in the morning, to help people really help themselves. And particularly in the way of to help unstick themselves, in all areas, to unstick their energy, to unstick their emotions, to unstick their body, to unstick their relationships, all of it. And one of the biggest callings that I feel like I have is to inspire people to do things for themselves, especially women, because we're experts, as everybody knows, at doing things for others. And we're usually not such we're not so great at doing things for ourselves. So this is really important. And the information that we get, especially around pregnancy, a lot of it is centered around the baby. and I think it's really important for women to really learn to take care of themselves during pregnancy and see pregnancy as an opportunity to focus on herself so that not only can she thrive, but the baby can thrive. And so what I found working with pregnant women through Qigong and the combination of the other healing practices that I use is that really this focus should be on managing her own energy and understanding all the mechanisms that go into this process, which is, why it's so crucial and why, to help them have a better experience.
Karen, it's so interesting that so many people know what self-care is, and they think that that is cultivating energy. But I wonder if you can specifically tell us what is Qigong and the methodology behind it, and just in general, what is energy, both internal and external?
Great question. I love it when people ask me that. So you could translate the word Qigong as moving energy, right? So it's the art of vital energy cultivation. So unfortunately, Qi comes from the Chinese word Qi, and we translate it as energy because we don't really have a better word in the English language, but in the Chinese, they have like lots of different words that mean, different kinds of energy, right? So they have all different kinds of Qi. For us, we just have energy. So it's a little limiting, but at the same time, it's the foundation. And, sometimes a lot of people, I use the word Qigong and they're kind of like, look at me like, what exactly is that? Maybe you've heard of Tai Chi, which is a more popular form of this kind of movement. And they're very similar. And I practice and recommend both. They're pretty similar, but Qigong is a lot of sort of internal cultivation of energy. And obviously, if you're building a baby inside of you, then you're going to need vital energy, right? to build a baby. You need it for everything, but especially during pregnancy. And one thing I just want to mention before I get into more details on Qi is that sometimes, women will express concerns because they don't really know a lot about Qigong, and they'll say, is it safe to practice during pregnancy? Are there dangers in it? And one thing I will say is I once heard a accomplished Qigong master say it in this way. He said, getting into a car while you're pregnant is far more dangerous than practicing Qigong. It's really something that is very, very safe and super enjoyable as well. But there are some basic things to consider. I actually created a little series in energy management specifically for women who are wanting to get pregnant or are pregnant or have a baby. And I'm actually giving it away as a free gift to all the listeners here. I'll explain a little bit more about that later. But that does include some of the basics of, what to make sure that you're doing or not doing while you're practicing Qigong during pregnancy.
So, Karen, I've been teaching yoga for 20 years. And in yoga, we have these movements that are like inhale, lifting the arms up. And it's very like these regimented movements where you're deep breathing and you're following the movements with your breath. And with Qigong, can you help us understand, is it movements linked to breathing linked to movements? Is it relaxation? Like, what does it actually look like? And I'll just, as a little side note, I just have to just tell all of you yes to birthers that Karen has the most amazing videos, that most of them are filmed at her home in Mill Valley overlooking this mountain, which is incredibly gorgeous. And you can see Karen doing the movements and demonstrating everything. So I know I've actually done some Qigong myself, but I really want, Karen, for you to explain exactly how it goes. Okay?
Oh, thanks. The mountain makes me look good. Well, so yeah, the movements, some Qigong actually can be just standing, right? And actually one of the differences between Qigong and Tai Chi is that Qigong is actually more focused on the mental internal aspect, right? So the mind is actually moving the body, like the energy moves the body. So you focus on the energy, and then that moves the body. Whereas Tai Chi, you're actually doing forms, and then the energy follows the form. So that's actually the one difference between the two. But with Qigong, so usually you're repeating some movements or you're doing some standing, and all of that is designed specifically to cultivate this life force. So in a sense, it doesn't matter that much. And that's why, you don't have to be doing it perfectly, because what your mind is focusing on is much more important than what your body is doing. And the movements are so gentle that you can't really harm yourself. I mean, I give some instructions in my videos about how to make sure you're not harming your knee or anything like that. But I mean, most of the time what it's doing is really opening the body and opening the energy, because we have these energy channels called meridians. Most of you, if anyone's ever had acupuncture, then you understand there's these like rivers of energy that are running through the body, and they sometimes get stuck, right? And so it's the stagnation of this energy that we're trying to move with the Qigong. And so you can do it with your mind or your body. And so you're usually doing a little bit of both.
So how long is the practice? When you're doing a Qigong practice, is it like 3 minutes or is it an hour, or, what's a typical kind of practice?
A lot of my videos on YouTube are about 2 minutes long. And people will say, I literally almost every day get messages on YouTube saying, oh my God, I just did this and it felt so good. I was just diagnosed with this thing or that thing, and it's really helping me. And thank you. It's really rewarding to see that, because what I was trying to do with those videos is make them really accessible, so that anybody could just go, okay, I don't have a lot of time. Because everybody always says, oh, I have no time, right? It's just that a lot of times we think that that it's time that we're missing, but it's actually energy. Because when you have more energy, you end up having more time. Because all of a sudden you're more efficient, you're magnetizing things more easily, things are flowing, they're not getting as stuck to you, So I want to just back up a little bit and talk about a little bit more specifically on this Qi or life force thing, right? Because we are all born with a certain amount of something that the Chinese call primordial Qi, okay? And this is our basic life force energy. Now, what's interesting, and it's kind of unfortunate, some people, is that we're not all born with the same amount. And so we actually, depending on the health of our parents, when we're born, that actually has a lot to do with how much primordial Qi we're born with, okay? And so the thing is that it would be great if we were taught how to cultivate it, because you can cultivate that. You can build more, although it's kind of a little bit like a trust fund. So you can increase it if you're really conscious about it. But most of the time in our society, we're taught how to deplete it, right? So we're not taught how to store it, how to conserve it. We're taught how to lose it. And it's really sad. So that's why before I learned about energy cultivation, I knew like 40 or 50 different healing modalities I was like teaching and practicing. And my energy was still depleted because I didn't realize that everything starts with Qi, right? And so when I realized that, I not only was determined to master the cultivation of energy, but also to identify the different ways that we deplete it and how we can prevent ourselves from doing that.
Awesome. Super, super helpful. So in terms of energy depletion, can you help us understand better what are the common themes that you see? What are the common themes that you see in terms of how people actually deplete their energy, and how does it get cultivated? So how is it depleted? How is it cultivated? And what are some of the biggest challenges that come up for people in terms of their energy cultivation? Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, one of the things that I've noticed, I mean, there's common ways that we deplete our Qi through different kinds of stressors, right? So obviously that's why, I mean, the work that you do with depth hypnosis is very similar, right, to cultivating energy and to the body talk, because all of this is looking at how can we pay attention to our bodies, to our emotions, to figure out, because a lot of times we don't really know, we don't really understand where our physical discomfort is coming from, all these things. We're not taught to be paying attention to this. So I think the main issue actually is just awareness, right? And I started looking at some of the other healing tools that I had out there, things like emotional release, right, through body talk and other tapping methods. And also, as you mentioned, since I'm a musician, I researched how we can use music to help further release negative emotions. You know, I talked about getting unstuck. A lot of that is, you know, an emotional. And this is, you know, the music piece is not something that everybody does, but something that I found to be extremely helpful. Both in, I actually have a whole section on this in my longer course on pregnancy, on how to use music during labor and delivery in a conscious way. But, you know, so by combining Qigong with a lot of these other ways of determining and managing our energy and other tools and other things that we're looking to do, I came up with some strategies to, you know, to help work that out. So I mentioned, emotional release, and that's one of the biggest challenges. So a lot of energy gets stuck there in the emotional area. And so, you know, especially during pregnancy, there's so many changes and emotions, and, you know, it's like, you don't even know where to start. You know, there's like, oh my God, I have to be a parent, you know, especially if it's your first child. It's like, I don't know how to do that. Nobody told me how to be a parent. You know, and then there's the relationships, and then there's fears all around the birth experience, and you know, the hormones that are coming up and changing and making you feel things that you don't even really feel. You're like, I'm having an emotion that's, I don't even know who this is. Who is this having this emotion, right? And maybe there's no reason, but you're feeling it anyway. And so most of the information about pregnancy that I see out there, that we see, is like more around the medical component of the health of the baby and, you know, what you should be doing. And there's not really that much out there to help us manage our emotional landscape during pregnancy. And, you know, my background is heavily based in psychology. I spent 10 years studying a psychological philosophy and bioenergetics and, you know, all these different kinds of psychological emotional tools. And so I personally did an enormous amount of emotional processing. And that's what I've been focusing my practice on in the last 15 plus years in my healing work, is especially helping people in the emotional area. And as I said, it can be confusing because we don't always know where our physical discomfort is coming from. We don't realize that what the emotional underpinnings are. So one of the things that came up that for some of the clients that I've worked with in this process is, for example, a lot of times women will end up processing the emotions that their mother was having while they were pregnant with them, right? So you probably have that. And it's amazing, right? And it's like, it's always a shock to people, like those of us in the birth, you know, and pregnancy, and like we understand because we've seen it. And then every time a woman comes in, she's like, wow, I'm so surprised. I don't even understand. I don't even remember, because they don't have that memory, but it's held and stored in their body. And so one experience came up with a woman whose mother, she was having these thoughts of like, oh, you know, childbirth has to be really hard and I can't do it on my own. And she's like, that is so not me. I'm having these thoughts and feelings that I've never had a feeling like that. She was a really confident person, you know, and she couldn't figure it out until through using some of these tools, we determined that that was actually coming from her mother, which she confirmed by talking to her mom. And mom's like, oh yeah, you know, I was really struggling with that when I was pregnant with you. And so we had to do some processing around that so that she could release that, so she didn't have to go through that same experience. Another client was having anxieties around having a child. And again, it was something that she was like, what? You know, I've wanted a child my whole life. I've had all these visions of exactly how I was going to have my child and what everything was going to be. And I felt so confident. And then all of a sudden, these anxieties are coming up in my body. And I'm thinking, what's this? Right? And so what we were able to determine through a body talk technique actually was that she was storing that memory in her stomach from her mother's anxiety. And so we were able to help her release that. So when it was her turn to be pregnant, she didn't have to go through that experience.
Wow, it's So interesting. And I could talk a lot about that. I see issues like this come up regularly in my depth hypnosis practice where people are having feelings about their experience that they think is theirs, but it's actually not. It's their mother's or their grandmother's, and it's pretty incredible. So we could go on about that, but I want to move us to my next question, which is really about, what other organs should we be paying attention to during pregnancy? What's happening, with the organs, and what should we be paying attention to?
Yeah, well, I think that, we tend to focus a lot on the uterus, during pregnancy, which of course is important. But there's actually, all the organs are important for the process, but there's a couple of organs in particular that I like to remind women of, and help them to kind of get a sense of during pregnancy and help them to understand what role they play in the process. So the first one that I think is probably the most critical is the kidneys. And now the kidneys, I mentioned this primordial chi that we're born with, right? It's the kidneys that actually store that primordial chi. So that's our life force. And I mentioned a little that it takes kidney energy or takes chi we have to give that to a baby. So we're basically donating kidney energy to our baby when we have a child, right? And and so I think what happens is since that's where we're storing our energy, that's the energy cultivation, that's where we get the motivation, right? Because the kidneys also store the ability for us to motivate and have the will to do things, and they also store fear. So aside from the energetic component, there's the emotional component too. And I think also, if women are not able to effectively support their kidneys during pregnancy and also right after, during the period right after the postpartum period, it's so critical because that's how they're going to recover more quickly. So if they don't do enough in advance to cultivate that and they don't realize how much they're losing, that's when a lot of times they have trouble postpartum. And I feel like we would see a lot less depletion postpartum, a lot less postpartum depression and other health challenges if they would pay more attention to their kidneys and to this energy cultivation piece, which is connected, right? So doing things to support the kidneys, which I talk about in that little series I mentioned, and also on a lot of my, pretty much all of my videos online and everything's all talking about the kidneys. The other organ that is super important during pregnancy is the spleen. Now, in a Western look at these things, it's not quite as important an organ, but in the Chinese perspective, it's actually super critical, both for the support of our blood and filtering of our blood, supports the kidneys with that. It's also a very important part of the immune system, the lymphatic system. So it's really critical for cleansing. It helps fight certain kinds of bacteria. And it's also one of the primary organs of nourishment, right? So if it's imbalanced, even if we're eating the right foods, right? Because it's all about nutrition, right? That's what they talk about. But if we could be eating all the right foods, but we might not be taking in the nutrients if we have not given the right kind of support to our spleen. And then, of course, if we're not getting the right nutrition, and the baby's not getting it either. So it's really, really important. And I think just an awareness around particularly these two organs would support women a lot during the pregnancy. And like I said, recovery, it's super, super important.
Karen, you give so much amazing information, and there's a lot to talk about, but I want to just see if you can you give us just like your top 2 recommendations, right? There's so much, right? There's so much that one can do to cultivate their energy, but what are your top 2 recommendations?
Well, I think from hearing me, you can probably guess, but I'll say it anyway, just to make the point and drive it home. Cultivating energy and making sure that we are noticing the things that we are doing to not to deplete it, right? So energy cultivation and energy management, looking at the ways that we can prevent ourselves from losing energy and all the ways that we can support ourselves to build energy. So that's number 1 for sure. Biggest thing, everything starts with that, because we're not going to be able to have the motivation to do these other things for ourselves without that. And then the other piece that I've been talking about that I think is super critical is managing our emotional landscape and having the right tools to do that. One of the primary tools I've used over the years is the healing system called Body Talk, but I've also studied 40 or 50 other modalities, and many of them have emotional components connected to them. So, you know, it's really about finding the tool and the strategy that feels most connected to your process, but definitely doing the work and taking the time to make sure that, especially during pregnancy, or if you're trying to get pregnant during pregnancy, that this is the time to focus on yourself. And a lot of women find that they're like, I am so glad that I had this experience of pregnancy alone, even after, you know, before even having the child, because it really helped me to delve into some of these things that were so stored so deep. I don't know that I ever would have thought to actually address them. And it helped their healing overall. So energy and emotions, big time. That's what I would talk about.
So you have it's just so fun listening to you. Now, one of the things that we haven't really talked about is all of your knowledge around essential oils, and you know, so you have your pregnancy course, but then you have this whole other body of work around essential oils and what essential oils to use during pregnancy and postpartum. And I wonder if you can, you know, just give us your pearls about what essential oils are most beneficial during pregnancy and postpartum, and where we can get information about that.
It is. And on my website, I have a whole course called Essential Oils 101. And that's a great series to give all sorts of information about how to use lots of different oils. I think I talk about, 30 or 40 different oils in there over time. So that's definitely a great place to get to know. So KarenAtkins.com, Essential Oils 101. Definitely for pregnancy. Because of the work that I do with the oils, I'd say a huge majority of the people I work with are either just had a baby or about to have a baby, having a baby. And so, I've heard more stories around the oils for pregnancy than just about any other story of anything. So definitely preparing, obviously the emotional support is huge. Some of the oils that are really supportive in the emotional, lavender is a great oil to support emotionally, and and having women having the oils going during the childbirthing process, labor and delivery is really important. And like I said, having oils to recover with, there's certain oils that support hormonal balance. So using those in the proper way. And in my longer course, where with the interviews in that process, we actually have a 2-part series talking about specific oils to use during pregnancy.
Can you tell us a little bit more about this pregnancy program that you put together with a bunch of experts, to which now I am a part of?
Yes. So I interviewed about 10 childbirth and pregnancy experts on topics ranging from preconception preparation, pregnancy nutrition, how to prepare for labor, natural pain management, postpartum body image. We covered a lot of topics that, anyone who's interested in this area is not going to want to miss. And the feedback that I've gotten so far from my students and clients is that they don't really know how they would have gotten through their pregnancy without it. So I'm actually really excited to share this with everyone. It's every time I listen to it, as I'm going through the process of putting it out there, it's like I get more excited. I'm like, this needs to get out into the world. So yeah, there'll be information on yourvibrantpregnancy.com about that.
So that's yourvibrantpregnancy.com. Awesome. I totally love it. So Karen, we're going to need to wrap this up. But I'm so amazed by, I'm actually not amazed, but I'm always impressed with what you share, what you have to offer. And I just really want to encourage all of the Yes to Birthers to go to your website, Karen Atkins, ATKINS.com, and look at what all that you have to offer, and check into the Qigong videos on your YouTube channel. And there's just so much that you have to offer. And I'm so grateful for that. And I just want to ask you one more question, which is like, really, what is your takeaway, right? If you could look into the eyes of the yes to birthers who are with us here today, what's one thing that you want them to walk away with?
Well, mostly just trust. One of the things that I focused on the most, both in the free gift with the series and as well as my full course, is really learning how to trust ourselves through this process, that our bodies know how to have a baby. That we, that there's a lot of information out there, and sometimes that can make us really in our heads about what is the right thing to do. And I would just say the most important advice that I can give really anyone, but especially someone going through the process of pregnancy, is to listen to your body, because your body never lies. It cannot lie. So we might be telling ourselves all sorts of things in our head, but our body knows the truth and it's going to feel it. So if we listen to our body and we allow ourselves to follow where that's leading, we will have an experience that's going to be fruitful for sure.
Sometimes there's so much conflict, like between my mind and my body. And can you tell us more about how do you know the difference between what's going on in your mind and your body? And how do you start to learn to listen to what your body is actually saying?
I do. I have a couple of things I can share. I do want to say that it is a process, right? And so being forgiving of ourselves when we have a sugar craving and we're like, well, my body just wants sugar. Maybe it's your emotional body that wants sugar, right? So that does happen. But I think that doing as much as we can to make a commitment to spending time with our body and doing things like a lot of the exercises that are in the series that I do are very simple. They're very short, but they do get you into your body. So I think we have to do more of that. Little simple things like tapping on the body along the meridians, which is a technique that I share as well online. Things that will actually break the mind, right? Because a lot of times what happens is when people will say, I can't meditate, right? Oh, I can't meditate. My mind is going all the time. Well, a lot of reasons we can't meditate, it's actually because our mind is restless, because our body is restless, because the energy is stagnant in our body. And so that's the thing that I've really learned about moving the energy, is that when we move the energy in our body, it actually calms our mind. I mean, it's miraculous, but it happens. So I would say, give yourself a break, but also just do 30 seconds of like some simple thing, either from one of the exercises I'm sharing or something that helps you do that. Sometimes I tell people doing little punches. It actually warms up the body and it energizes the kidneys. I'll like punch in opposite directions, but something really simple like that. There's another technique that I share in the series called balancing the cortices, which is a brain balancing technique. That also really helps. So there's very simple, quick, 30-second to 1 minute to 2-minute things that you can do to get yourself back in your body. And that's when you want to start asking the questions, right? So if you're going to try to solve the problem when you're still in your head, it's going to be much harder. So doing simple things to get you back into your body is a great way to start.
Karen, it has been such a pleasure being here with you. You have provided so much useful information, and I just really want to encourage all the Yes to Birthers to go to KarenAtkins.com, check out her vitality training, and look at her videos or qigong videos, and just see all that she's about. Listen to her music. Her music is amazing. Thank you all for being here. What a total treat.
Thank you. Bye, everyone. See ya.
I am so happy that you're a part of the Yes to Birth movement. Please visit yes2birth.com to learn more about my pregnancy, birth, and beyond audio relaxation program, my childbirth education and techniques programs, and my private counseling and coaching. Yes to Birth. I'm Rachel Yellen. Bye.